Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters, and debunkers. Flat Earth is a key to a doorway that leads to your freedom. Freedom from mental slavery and mind control. Because you eventually realize that everything we thought we knew about this world and the people and the life on it is just conceptual, and it's been put there in our minds in order to control us, much like we control domesticated animals. And I'm going to talk about this whole aspect of what we see and do in this realm in a minute when I get to the whiteboard. But I just wanted to first preempt this by explaining that nothing changes about what we see or do, really, to an extent, in the world when we realize we don't live on a globe, or when you go flat Earth. Yeah, everything still works the same. The sun rises and sets in the same way. The stars do their thing. We have horizons. All of that, you understand, is down to interpretation. And of course we have these physical boundaries of countries, and those a certain number of countries in this imaginary boundary of a globe. Because then we are contained like animals, and we are used as human resources. But when you see how it all works, you then realize that your participation in all of this is willing, and you always have a choice. Nothing is usually forced upon us, although it may feel like that. It's always down to how we react or act, or whether we question certain things, and whether we do it in a timely manner, or we just opt for the easy option that can often lead to disaster. So you've got to understand that we are in a realm that exists on trade in all kinds of levels, from the plant life to the animals to us and other entities within this realm. It's all based on the fact that we are in a realm that works on trade. Everything trades with everything else. And when you can see that that's how the world works, you can see that certain trading is done or even created to create an advantage for the trader. Yeah. So let's go to the whiteboard, because I've just listed these things down in a kind of what I hope is a simple format to really just explain the realm that we exist in. What are we doing here? How does it all work? Well, this isn't about necessarily talking about what the sun is, what the moon is, and the shape of the earth, or anything like that. Like everything, the sun and the moon and the earth itself have a job to do. They have a task to fulfill. They have an objective. They have a mission. And it is based on creating this environment that I've kind of called a realm of trade. Okay? And that's where we are. Everything trades with everything else. So in summary, really, all life on Earth exists in a trading relationship. All right? All life on Earth exists in a trading relationship. I'm just adjusting the microphone to make sure you pick up the sound. All right? Think about it. First of all, we'll just start with the plants. Okay? Of course, you have to have an Earth to start with. You have to have some kind of physical plane for these things to happen. And you have to have an up and down. Okay? Doesn't matter how that was created. But we have plants. They get energy from the sun, the air, and the soil, predominantly. And in return, what they give us in exchange, or give the earth or the realm in exchange, is they provide food, air, and fertilizer. Of course, they become food for animals. They process the air, and they also then, when they die, they return to the earth, and they become fertilizer for the next generation. Okay, so you've got that continual cycle. Easy stuff that we're taught in biology, right? It's self-evident. You don't have to believe anything to understand that that's how it is. That's the science of the way plants exist and die and reproduce. Of course, there is a function that animals play in reproduction as well. Animals get energy from the sun, air, and of course the plants that they eat and other animals that they eat if they're carnivores. Okay, and of course those animals have got their energy from the food provided by the plants. All right, the rabbit eats the plants, the leopard eats the rabbit. Okay, and so in return, animals provide things like pollination. Obvious one is the bees, but there are other animals that do that. They get some food from the flower, and in return they help to pollinate the flower. So the flower doesn't, is obviously has to continue its expansion before it dies. Yeah? The animals will, of course, also provide food for other animals, or when they die, they provide food for the plants. Animals also provide labor. We can understand this when it comes to buffalo, horses, sheepdogs, things like that. Okay, there's an exchange. It could be eagles, yeah, that work for food in other countries. And it's interesting that birds are a kind of animal that really does seem to understand the idea of trade, from chickens to magpies and maybe eagles as well. We've got other animals such as dogs and various domesticated animals that have been domesticated because there is this understanding of a symbiotic relationship of trade. So, the animals also provide fertilizer, for example, the fields which the humans are tilling. And so, of course, we use and consume animals and plants. So in some senses, you can think about maybe what the Bible says as we have domain. Humans have dominionship over the animals. Because yes, we domesticate them and we put them in pens, we corral them. And so that's why you can think about us in a similar relationship with those possibly above us, or perceivably above us, I should say. So us humans use and consume animals and plants, and in return we provide protection. Now, obviously if you give a greenhouse to a plant, it will flourish. Okay, so there is an exchange there. Of course, they provide food for us, whether it's plants or animals. We also provide comfort. Okay, protection, of course, animals need protection. We all need protection. That's an animal instinct in us. And we think we exist in this realm where we might occasionally come across a predator in the jungle, be it a snake or a tiger. But there are other predators within humanity as well, which we often don't consider, and we'll come to that as we go down the list. So, all right, we provide protection, food, comfort in exchange for labor. So the buffalo helps us plow the fields, and we get rice from that. And then, of course, at the same time, the buffalo is getting fed and watered and protected, and it's also fertilizing the soil for the crops to grow. A wonderful symbiotic relationship. So, there's nothing necessarily wrong with an animal and a human entering into some kind of trading relationship there, an agreement. But obviously, it depends on how fair that agreement is and how the animal is treated. So we also have humans trading with other humans, and of course that's for protection again, for food and some diversity in our food supply, as well as comfort and convenience. So it's just natural. We will always trade. Everything trades. Humans will always trade. Animals and humans will always have a relationship. Animals will always understand trade, and so it goes on down the line, or across the plane, as it were. All right, and that's just common sense. That's what we observe going on. It's a natural thing, and we'll travel the seas to trade and get more resources. Okay. Then we have governments, and they use humans as capital and resources, human resources. Okay, so a government and it basically working for the country to use its assets, its human resources, whether that's a supply of labor to do mining or whatever industry might be available to that country. Okay, and of course it can also then do things like take out loans and get into debt over its capital, its human capital resources. And so then, obviously, there is a bit of a symbiotic relationship going on between governments and banks here, okay? But ultimately, the banks can control the governments, and they use both humans and governments to create debt. So that the banks create personal, corporate, and national debt. So that might be you've got an arrangement to pay off a car or a mortgage. Then you've got corporate debt. You need financing to expand your business or to pay employees or whatever. You've got national debt, which kind of brings all those together. And the government, the politicians will put you and your country into debt because they want to borrow money to do something with the country. Might be to create some infrastructure. And so, the banks do this to governments through loans and insurance against expensive and necessary products. All right, so you need a car, you need a comfortable car. Cars are really expensive, but you're given this impression that you need one. Okay, so you can't afford to just buy one outright. Usually, you have to get a loan if you want the good one. Yeah, and so there you are, voluntarily going into this debt agreement. You don't have to, but it depends on your desires. Do you really want it? Not do you need it, but do you really want it? And of course, necessity is an important thing. It's a concept a lot of the time. What do we really need? We need food, we need shelter, we need air to breathe, we need water, we need medicine sometimes. But all of that can be provided by nature itself, from the trees, from the plants, whatever. Okay. So then these industries are born out of this in order to create debt. But another thing that of course creates debt is crisis, such as a disease. Got C19 there as a good example, just happened a few years ago, right? So what happened? We had this threat of a disease, and so people stopped trading. They literally stopped trading in the normal ways. They stopped meeting. They stopped doing this exchange face to face. Yeah, it was completely cut off, and only essential services were allowed. Yeah, this is all done in the mind, and a lot of people willingly closed down their businesses. And then, of course, once they closed down their business and they weren't trading anymore, or weren't going to be able to trade for the foreseeable future, then, of course, what did they do? They went and got a loan to tide them over so they could pay their employees while they were closed and not trading. How many companies can last a few months like that, or even 6 months or a year? Not many, really. Okay, but don't worry, the banks are on the way to save, or the governments using the banks were there to save the day and dish out loans for this crisis that suddenly appeared. Yeah. So debt was created. Personal debt, corporate debt, and national debt. Personal debt because people couldn't work or for whatever reason. Corporate debt because companies needed financing. National debt because the government had to go and buy all this protection against the disease. Yeah. Of course, we've got conflicts popping up all over the world all the time. These are another crisis that ultimately ends up creating debt, especially if you destroy that country and then the people have nothing. It becomes necessary for them to borrow money to get back on their feet, or the country needs to borrow money to recreate the infrastructure. Yeah. Natural disasters, natural in inverted commas there. Weather, earthquakes, hurricane, floods, all these things obviously create problems. People's houses get washed away. And for these things, of course, you're encouraged to have insurance, because there's no way that you could afford to rebuild what you had if you didn't have the insurance, which you were already probably indebted for anyway. And so maybe you were paying off a mortgage or paying off something expensive, and that got taken away. You need insurance in case that gets taken away and you can't carry on repaying what you still owed for it. And it's all voluntary, yeah? And so that's really just a simple common sense evaluation of the way things are in this realm. And so when you understand that the globe and globalization and everything that goes with it, the control systems in place, the way we are treated like animals, and the way human resources are used, you can be free of a lot of this. You can be free of what the governments are insisting you do, and you can be free of what the banks want you to do, and you can be free of the worries from crisis, conflicts, and natural disaster. Because while they do happen, when you are living a life that is less distracted by all of the nonsense put out here and more in tune with the way things really are, then you don't get caught up in this, and you don't find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time. You end up being in the right place at the right time. And that's why it's so life-changing, because it's not necessarily a physical and immediate change to your life, but it is liberating to the fact that you can stop being directed by all this nonsense down here that we don't need, and start being directed by our natural, innate trading relationship that we are born into on this earth. It's a really simple, fruitful, and abundant way to live on flat earth. Thank you very much.